depending upon how many other people are able to come in this morning, or this evening, sorry, we may or may not go to breakout, and that's okay. If we stay as we are, then we'll just have a really good discussion with those of us that are here. So I will pass it back to you, Pam.
Thanks. We will try to monitor chat as well. So if you have questions, you can put them in chat, or you can break through and ask. We don't mind being interrupted and working your questions from there. Either way works for us. So yesterday, for those who were with us, we hope we started to fan the spark to get establishing and strengthening of your ERGs, your DEI councils, and your BRG program within your specific agencies. Today, we're going to continue working on those steps to solidify the program further. And we want to give you a reminder that we are focused on federal government. We realize that every agency works a little bit different, but the information that Jamie and I are giving you is based on policy, our hands-on experience, and our personal knowledge of working within an agency or a variety of agencies. So it is important to pause and consider the different aspects and impacts that having the program brings. Who has the oversight authority in your agency? And by that, I mean, what office level? Is it in your HR area? Is it in your DEI area? Is it in your EEO area? Is there a joint delegation of authority? You should know where that program actually sits within your agency. Also, is that office appropriately sized, and does it have the correct staffing so that they can handle the size of the ERG or BRG that you're planning to have? If you've got several individuals who are going to be responsible for the programs, is it going to be one staff member kind of leading the others, or are all of the staff members having an equal division of that responsibility? How are you going to work out those duties and responsibilities? Are you looking at having the ERG be a program as a primary duty for that staff member, or is it considered a collateral duty? I know in some agencies it's an added other duty is assigned in addition to whatever their primary role is. In other agencies, we've seen it where that is their primary duty to work and operate that ERG or BRG. Do you have the training that you provide to the folks about the ERG and the BRGs? Are you considering the intent of having those ERGs? Why do you want them in the first place? What existing agency policies do you have in place, or do you have to create a new policy in your agency that oversees the ERG responsibilities? Do you have a charter? And what is your marketing that you'll use to get membership into those ERGs and BRGs? We're going to be talking a little bit about each of those areas. And personally, I've had experiences from agencies that did not have an ERG concentration to an agency who had nothing but that ERG concentration. So I'm offering my depth and breadth of information here in hopes that you can kind of figure out where you fit in that spectrum, and then work it best with your agency's leadership to develop that program and move forward. Jamie, I'll turn it to you.
All right, thanks, Pam. So one of the things we're looking at here is the oversight of the authority, and I'm going to give a little bit of background on where Pam and I are coming from. Without getting into specifics, we are part of an agency within the Department of Defense, and at our site where we are, we have a few thousand people. And within that, there are different areas that are responsible for either DEI or HR. And I do want to point that out. Pam had mentioned where would it reside, right? So we are part of an office that is actually completely separate from human resources. We don't fall under HR, and it, that is my experience with this. And I think it works because I think we would be lost if we were in HR. That doesn't mean that other programs having their DEI in human resources aren't the right way to go about it. There are partnerships, and there are definitely partnerships that I have with human resources on a weekly, if not daily basis. But that goes from the diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility piece to it. But within all of that, they had to staff the employee resource groups somewhere, so they put it within DEI, and that certainly works with how we're structured. Now, when we're talking about how many staff members we have for responsibility for your program, so for those of you that do have programs, if you can throw into chat there. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you give an example of a government agency that has leading ERGs as a specific position and not a role in addition to their day jobs? Pam,
Yes.
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, some of the agencies call them special emphasis program managers, and those special emphasis program managers have the role and responsibility to oversee either 1, 2, 3, 4, however many ERG programs that are within their agency, depending on, I know one agency has it where the special emphasis program manager has one ERG that their responsibility have that responsibility for. And then there's another agency that has an ERG or a special emphasis program manager responsible for 3. So it depends on how many people are on the staff in that particular office, and then they break it out accordingly.
Yeah, so since we are a satellite of our headquarters, that we do not have that SEPM, that special emphasis program manager. I would be the closest thing to that right now. However, I've got oversight of all the ERGs where we're located, whereas up in the DC area, there are people within that work role who are only responsible for a given ERG, and then they work that throughout the enterprise. Now, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have oversight of the areas that people like me are located globally, but we interact with one another and we partner in that responsibility. So yeah, you're welcome. And going back to the number of staff members, so aside from the SEPMs that we just described to you, looking at that from the position of where Pam and I actually reside, that's one of the things where we're having to deal with that. Just like everybody else coming out of COVID, there aren't as many personnel available as there had been in the past. We used to have a staff of 6. I would say we're at 3 now, and we're working on getting a part-time employee to come in to support the programs across the board. And that's primarily because the ERGs are not my sole position. ERGs could definitely be a sole position for somebody where we are, but it's just a program underneath other responsibilities that I maintain. So how many ERGs would you create at your organizations? Now, we have 11 with ours, and I would say that's something that you really need to think about too. Even though we are responsible for 11, if the employees are not interested in an employee resource group, you can't staff it. So, and by staff it, I mean, on a volunteer basis, people would have to take responsibility for it. So you're going to end up focusing on those areas that your organization is really looking for. I think in some ways that could be geographically based wherever you're located. Other ways, depending upon the type of organization you have, if you're global in reach, then you probably have a larger organization that could, I'm not going to say cater is not the right word, but could at least staff the employee resource groups with enough people to run them effectively. Now, one of the things that you do need to consider is budget. How are you going to do things? When you work for the government, the taxpayer pays your bills. So we have to be very diligent when it comes to funds. I can tell you one of the things that I'm able to do, although I don't have a set budget, I work my budget through our chief of staff. There's opportunity to provide cash awards for behavior-based recognition. And then the other big focus area that we have is training. And I think training is really important when it comes to your employee resource groups. Anybody who's willing to come in and lead, you want them to have leadership experience. And if not, then you want them to be able to get leadership experience and training. So it's one thing that would be very important for you to talk to your organizations about is what does that look like and how do you fund these personnel to get the training that they need? Because not only are they going to lead your employee resource groups, but the expectation is they're going back into your workforce and they're going to lead your workforce. If somebody is in an ERG for a limited amount of time, 1 to 2 years in a leadership position, they'll probably always be a part of it actively, but at a certain point, they're going to step out and get back into operations. And when they do that, you want to make sure that they've learned skills necessary to be successful leaders in your organizations. We do have where are they going to operate, local or global. Again, I think that really ties into the size of your organization. Some are going to have personnel across the globe that are going to be interested in these efforts, and others, depending upon where you go, I'm not saying how far down as in a lower level, but depending upon where you are, you have plenty of people, but you operate in a space that's at a local level or a state level, and you might not have that global reach, but it doesn't mean that you're not still fulfilling the same needs of these ERGs. And then think about how you're going to convey expectations to obtain desired results. If you were in any of the sessions today, there are a lot of ways that you can meet and discuss strategy, get metrics, and then design goals either strategically or tactically, or based around what the expectations are for your ERGs. And these are all things for you to think about. Now, what we have here is a structure of what Pam and I are working off of. I call this our boiled eggs, but we are looking at the top, your senior leadership level. For us, that's our director, or for the corporate sector, the chief executive officer. We have a deputy director and chief of staff. Now, those are your top three in the C-suite. Now, underneath that, as I mentioned, we have a headquarters element, and within that, there's an organization that is solely dedicated to DEIA. And that's led by a senior executive who answers directly to the director in this case. And she, in this case, is responsible for the DEI efforts for organization across the globe. Now, when you go down a layer, that DEI advisor, that's where I'm sitting. That's me at my site, and I have counterparts at our other sites across the country and a couple of other global locations. And the responsibility levels are different depending upon the size of where we are. There are others within the organization that have responsibilities of inclusion councils like I do. And within those inclusion councils, we have our employee resource group representatives, and we have military representation because we're a DoD organization. Yesterday, if you were in the meeting, those are the ERGs that are represented here. And then our military representatives are, for those of you familiar with the military, they are tied to the local commands, whether that's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and we've even had Space Force. That's a new one. Hold on one second. It's happened to me yesterday. Somebody's trying to sell me car insurance. So you end up with the military commands that are a part of these greater councils. And it does not mean that they can't be an ERG leader. We do things a little different, and I'll get into it, but as far as how that looks, we have assigned military representatives, and then there's opportunity for other military representatives to apply for these leadership positions, just like any other DoD civilian, and they can take that on and run those focus areas. Now, again, going into that structure, you've got the DEIA advisor, that's my seat, so it's the point of entry for all things DEIA where I'm located. Along that, I also have ERG senior advocates. And they serve as advisors to employee resource groups or also to the Inclusion Council. Now, the senior advisors in our location are actually senior executives within the DoD. So they outrank me. I don't tell them what to do. We work together. I'm lucky to have senior executives that are willing to work with employees at various levels. But they also come for expertise that we are able to provide in that DEI advisor's position. And then you also look at your ERG officers. Now, one of the things I want to point out here within the employee resource groups, historically, we have had the chair, co-chair, action, and comms officer positions. When we started our Inclusion Council last year, we changed a little bit of the structure to where we did not have the co-chair, action, and comms officers for each of the employee resource groups. And instead, by combining all of the ERG chairs into the Inclusion Council, the expectation was to work across that intersectionality piece, and to work with one another so that we can really flesh out efforts. Not all ERGs have as many active members as others. I mentioned yesterday, we have some ERGs that are very active. They've got a pretty robust membership. And then we have others who have dedicated leaders, but they might not have the personnel behind them to really do everything that they're looking to do. So the Inclusion Council mindset was that we're going to provide them that opportunity to really work together. And then you have your members. The members are always there. They come and go in our place working with working DoD. Especially with the military, you probably have them for 2 to 3 years max before they have to PCS and move on to another assignment. If you're lucky, they'll be around longer. And those are service, that's leadership opportunity there that you want those, we in our case, want those service members to be a part of that team. They're incredibly important. And as you can imagine, they should make up the majority of that American Veterans ERG. So looking more at the construct here, excuse me. So we're looking at a three-pronged structure from the workforce engagement, right? So the senior leadership that I discussed, we also have EEO, and then we align that with our diversity goals. And one of the things I mentioned yesterday is that mission, we all have mission. We all have mission statements, and mission to be successful means we want a fully integrated workforce that works together. They can understand and learn from one another, and they're respectful of one another. And that respect is a key part of inclusion. And we really want that to happen through the employee resource groups. And the ERGs offer that opportunity for the broader workforce to understand and learn from underrepresented groups that they may not normally have opportunity to interact with. We work hard at providing awareness and offer interaction opportunities to where they can come in and any member of the workforce can come in and learn from an ERG. That seems to really serve us well because one of the things I can tell you, being an Army veteran, when you join the military, you are thrust into diversity. You will meet members of society you never have had an opportunity to communicate with in the past, and you learn to work with one another and understand the strengths that we all provide and bring to the table by being different. Going back to our senior advocates, you know, this is an important thing. You have to have buy-in from the senior advocates. They are there to serve as the senior level oversight. They provide top cover, and they're able to help any of the ERGs, whether it's work through their strategy. You know, they do serve as mentors, and depending upon their budgets, they can also help. And that's another way that you might be able to find additional funds for any of the activities that you're trying to do, or training, as I mentioned earlier. And then with DEIA, back to my office, you know, addressing issues and concerns identified by the ERGs. That is one thing I will say we continue to have to be, we need to continue to improve upon. We were looking for the statistics. We just came out of a promotion cycle. We want to understand, did we meet the mark? Are we representing the workforce appropriately? And if not, we want to know where and why that could be. So we're going to identify those areas, and the ERGs play a strong part in helping identify those barriers. Now, positions, again, going back to the chair, co-chair, action, and comms officer. Now, for us, I'm going to give you that two varying levels. You can look at those as leadership positions for the employee resource groups, but in our case, the Inclusion Council itself, they provide that broader business resource group oversight. They're the umbrella for the ERGs and the military service components. That chair has responsibility for running the organization as an organization. Now keep in mind, everybody here, however, outside of myself, and then at the bottom, the EO advisor, who's a military rep, these are not full-time positions. So one thing that we do with these positions is that we have worked out policy to enable 20% of the pay period for these leaders to dedicate to the Inclusion Council and their employee resource groups. If that's something that you're having a hard time with, how do you find dedicated time for personnel who are doing this on a part-time basis? Policy is a place to go. Work that with HR. It doesn't mean that every pay period, 20% of their time is dedicated to the ERGs or the Inclusion Council. As I explained to the leaders, when you come into this, there are going to be times of year where you are going to be more heavily involved with your ERG or the Inclusion Council. And then the rest of the year, you're probably not going to have as much going on. And if you can imagine right now being Hispanic Heritage Month, our Hispanic Latino ERG is very involved right now. So after mid-October, they will be able to step back, and those leaders are going to be able to rededicate that time back into their day-to-day job. But their management has agreed to allow them this space, a safe space for them to come in and to represent the Hispanic Latino community within our workforce. And that's an amazing thing because they do offer opportunity, knowledge, and if I didn't tell you yesterday, we had a HLAT event on Friday. I am not a dancer, and one of the things that we offered up to the workforce in our big open forum were salsa lessons. Being the DEIA advisor and one of the leaders at our site, I was pulled into the mix, and it was just me in the middle of a workforce learning the salsa. You never know what you're going to get out of your ERGs. That is just one thing. How does that drive towards mission? I will tell you, that's probably a question some people ask. I will say morale is an improvement, and morale goes a long way towards mission success. So never underestimate the power of what any of the ERGs are going to bring to the table, whether it's directly tied to your efforts or if it's something that's just going to improve the day-to-day quality of life for everybody. Now you're looking at your military service. Yes, it was fun, Kara. Looking at this military service component reps, as I mentioned, they are assigned by their service commands. We do not ask the commands to run any type of advertisement for this. We're less interested in who they send to us and more interested in that they send somebody to us, and then we will work with those individuals. Now, most of those individuals have some type of equal opportunity background for their service, so they're already operating in this space, and it works, and we're able to take that back to their command so that we can grow, in this case, better networking. And your senior advocates, I've already touched upon that. Something that's unique to us at our location, many of you may not have, if you were in a position where you work with military members, I have with me as a partner an EO advisor. She's the military EO representative for our site. In this case, she happens to be Army, but she is the lead for our site for all of those services. So anything EO related within the services or service civilians, I won't get into that, but they are tied to the actual services themselves. If it's EO related, they're going to go to her. Now, what we do is present ourselves as a joint team. We want to make sure that everybody understands that they're cared for. And if a service member were to come to me, I'm still going to get them the help that they need. It's just one of those things where we do have certain lanes in the road. However, the networking opportunity that these individuals are able to pull out of the employee resource groups goes a long way towards our ability to service all of our employees, military, civilian. And this is just a piece to that, and an important piece. And Pam, this is you.
Okay, so I want to go back for a moment and talk about little things, because little things really do matter as you're considering establishing your groups or refining your groups. You want to make sure that you're thinking about some of these things, and trust me, these are only a few of the things that you need to be thinking about. Are you going to make sure that you know the size of your group? Are you going to get a group that's so large that it's not beneficial anymore? How do you determine that? How are you going to identify the members of your BRG? We tend to do an annual call asking for the volunteers with their supervisory approval. So we get that up front so that there's no questions asked later. And that way we have the buy-in from their managers as well as from the employee that, yes, they will provide their time and attention to fulfilling whatever role it is within that BRG or ERG. You want to look at what specific ERGs are going to be created we tend to follow federal law, as I discussed yesterday. We look at those underrepresented areas and have the ERGs fulfilling those underrepresented groups. But is that all? Some agencies go beyond those underrepresented groups and do invite others to join. Do you have a way for different and new ERG ideas to be processed and approved? That's something that you need to think about. Who is going to be eligible to be a member of your ERG? For us, we invite all military and civilian employees. Because of the restrictions with contractors, we cannot allow contractors to be part of our ERG groups, which is something that they're looking to see how that might be able to change moving forward. But currently we are unable to have those contractor personnel involved with our ERG activities. Do you have a membership limited to the number of ERGs that one person can belong to, or are they open to everyone? We really encourage one person to be a member of each ERG so they get the depth and breadth of experience in diversity and engagement and inclusion. By limiting themselves to one ERG, we feel that that limits their perspectives and that limits their understanding as they network and talk with each other. So we open it up and say one person can belong to all 11 groups so that they get that rich understanding and that rich, diverse impact in their day-to-day activities. How are you going to select your officers? We have a process in place where, again, the individuals volunteer with their supervisor's permission and go through a review and interview process. We feel that process actually allows the individual to have some interviewing experience. It allows them to express to those that are interviewing what their plans are, what their dreams are, how they see the ERGs running, some of the ideas they may have, and so forth. And it makes it more interactive from the get-go. How are you going to have your senior leaders engaged? Are they only going to be serving in an advocate role? Or is there opportunities for senior leaders, even though they may not be designated as a senior advocate, to be involved with the seniors or to be involved with the ERGs? We've had senior leaders who have specifically asked for the ERGs to post their monthly meeting calendars so that they can sit in on the meetings and learn what activities are going on, so that they can hear what concerns the groups may have, so that they can help work on some of those issues. So think about how you want your senior leaders involved and engaged. How are you going to get your managers and supervisors engaged? This one is also an interesting area to consider, because managers and supervisors have so much on their plate as far as the day-to-day operations and the duties and responsibilities that comes with being a manager and supervisor. How are you going to make sure that they're also part of your ERGs? How are you going to make sure that they are knowledgeable about the activities that the ERGs and BRGs are having, and that they make sure their teams are participating with those efforts? Again, be thinking about, how do you do your messaging? How do you do your marketing? How do you ensure that managers and supervisors understand the value of your ERG and your BRG? So everything that we've discussed to this point should be coordinated and collaborated and in place prior to rolling out the program. Because if you don't think about it ahead of time, then you'll be scurrying to figure it out when you're in the mix of things, and you may miss a great opportunity. So I would strongly recommend that you think about it ahead of time. Jamie, back over to you.
So I think she already hit everything on this slide, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. So I will tell you, one of the things that I've gone through over this past month, marketing. Marketing is incredibly important for you. And this is an area where you as an ERG leader are able to engage with your senior executive workforce. We did talk about accountability a little bit. I do want to say this for those of you that are either executives yourselves, or if you're working with your executives, within our workforce, we have a performance objective that is tied to diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. And within that, that often brings people to the employee resource groups, because it's, quite frankly, it's an easy win. If you want to make sure you're meeting that performance objective, your employee resource groups are a great way to be a part of that. And likewise with the senior executives, from the director on down, each of those senior executives also is held accountable for DEIA and the ERGs being a part of that, which is why they will reach out. But when you're talking about the marketing aspect, how do we staff these positions? And essentially, we've had to run a marketing campaign within our own workforce just to make sure that they understand opportunities exist. So there are, excuse me, there are times of year where within an organization we do advertise for these positions. It's less of voluntary and more of a selection through a panel or a duly constituted board, meaning that we have to have at least one female and one minority member out of 3, and one person cannot serve both roles. But then that, like Pam said, that gives each of these individuals an opportunity, if they're not already leaders, to understand what it's like to apply for positions. And if they're going to be interviewed, depending upon the number of applicants we have, we'll make the decision between either interview or paneling it, just depending upon the responses we've received. Going back to that marketing piece, we message to the workforce. We have pre-approved messaging that goes out through our strategic communications office. We have ways, our internal networks, our internal websites. We also have strategically placed televisions around our building that are there simply to inform the workforce that they're not used for anything else. We call them cool signs. I don't know if y'all have those. So those are ways to market. And then, when it says here, identify a source to field the questions. Oftentimes it depends on who the experts are to field the questions, what we mean by questions. In our case, the questions we have are actual interview questions, if you will, that people will respond to, and we will take those applications. When you're looking at the charter, I just updated our charter to actually provide more specificity for our location. It had been tied to a more global aspect, and it didn't work for our site. So we had to get a better handle on how the process was going to be run in order to make these selections. When you're looking at, is it broad or specific in detail, that's really going to be up to the goals that you set. And I think that's important that whoever your senior most executive at your location is, you want that tied into that individual's desire for goal setting within the organization. And then also tie it back to your overall mission goals, because without that, then you don't want to go high and right and run something that doesn't really feed back into the organization. And you're looking at coordinated process by internal offices. That goes back to everything that I just talked about with how are we going to make this work? How are we going to bring these individuals into the fold, and how are we going to staff these ERG leadership positions? And it all plays a part to it. So for the sake of time, I'm going to move us into our breakout session. I'm going to ask Susan, I don't know how many people we have now. Can you give me a head count?
I'm seeing 26, Jamie.
26. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our breakout sessions of about four piece randomly. And Pam, give you an opportunity to ask how you would like them to hold their discussions in breakout session.
I'd like you to discuss some of the questions that we posed to you during the session. What do you have in place? What is it that you still need to work on? Do you look at the larger picture of, is it already operating, or are you just beginning? And how are you handling some of the questions that we posed throughout this afternoon? If
So
you
we're
can
gonna
do all
give you-
that in 10 minutes.
Well, let's go ahead and give them 15.
Okay.
And then when we come back, we'll have 10 minutes for an out brief that worked yesterday. I think it'll work today too. So Susan, when you're ready, go ahead and send them to the breakout rooms. There we go. All right. So it looks like we have everybody back now. I will be honest. So you're aware, I have a lot of hard conversations. I'm certified to teach a course called Crucial Conversations. So I can call on people and make them feel uncomfortable. And I see faces on the screen. But if anybody wants to volunteer to come first with some of the things that you discussed, please feel free. How about Nancy Hernandez? I see you there. You were smiling. I can't hear you.
I didn't realize the video was still on. I think it's the end of the day. It's been a long day, but it's been wonderful. With our group, basically, I'm the newbie because I don't have an ERG. I'm attending the summit to really learn, get as much information. And the second one that I probably fall behind, her ERG is only 2 months old. So it's great to hear people are still in the learning stage, or like myself, trying to kickstart. And I think overall what I got from it is, from previous speakers, having your plan, having a good solid plan, being able to be prepared to present to the executive suite. You got to convince and get that buy-in. I loved Dr. Hubbard's whole presentation, because learning about the data analytics and the metrics and the financial component, because you were talking about employees and retention and how maybe use that as a tool to convince the executive suite, hey, it's worth it at the end. But overall, the reasons we want ERG is certainly to have that strong engagement with our employees, to have that means a place of feeling safe, and that you can be yourself and build on the morale, because morale is down no matter what company is out there, private and public. People are still not themselves. So for me, this is really an opportunity to develop the ERGs, create the ERG, and just offer that as another part of service to our employees and helping them grow professionally and just to stay connected. So I'm hoping to continue learning more. I love the first 2 days, looking forward to the rest of the week. So that's why I'm smiling.
No, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. Now, so let me ask this: what ERG are you a part of right now that you're just starting?
Well, I haven't. I'm the chief diversity officer for the
Gotcha.
state controller's office, and so I oversee. I mean, we have a women's group, and we have a veterans, which is very good, and they're very active. I engage myself in their activity, but I also conduct other type of activities within our agencies, and the audience really speaks to me. We have a very diverse group, so I think I'm looking to establish at least 2 in the year 2023. I'm going slow because I know we have the people who would be interested in joining. It's just getting it started.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome.
How about Shauna? How does LA County look?
Thank you for asking. LA County is shining. Child Support Services is one of 40 plus departments in LA County, but LA County as a whole is pushing. And I said yesterday, we are striving to be a national model for anti-racism and diversity. And here at Child Support Services, we're advancing equity using our ERGs. We also created a work group to go through all of our policies to make sure that we were looking at them through a equity and gender equity lens. We're in the strategic planning process. We're engaging our stakeholders now to develop our value statements. And so we're doing a whole lot of things. And I was sent to a conference by the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, GARE. Maybe you all are members of GARE. And we were asked to bring back the learning. And I brought back the suggestion that we lift up an Office of Equity, because our ERGs were couch surfing in my previous role. And I interviewed for the position as a civil service organization, and earned the position as Equity and Inclusion Manager as of last Friday. So I think this is my third day on the job in an official capacity, but I've been running our ERGs for the last 2 years virtually. And I specifically led mindfulness, the mental health and wellness ERG. And I found that it was extremely helpful for us to stay connected and for us to stay sane during pandemic living and all the different things that sent us through. But we are using our ERGs to build morale, just as my counterpart said, because morale is down across all sectors. And we're also using it to educate, because the third reconstruction that many people are labeling this time that we're in, many of these conversations that we're having, the terminology that we're using, saying anti-racism, talking very plainly about gender roles and trans awareness, and these conversations were taboo in our organizations, especially in governmental organizations. And so we're taking our time and using resources like what you and Pamela have provided today to build our capacity, to make sure that our foundation is strong, and understanding that we have to have our long game lenses on, that this is not a sprint. And we're okay with that, because what we are trying to do is to revolutionize the culture here in LA County at Child Support Services. So maybe I won't see the full manifestation in my career, but maybe those people that come after me will inherit a new role in an organization where all employees are seen, felt, and heard. And that's really my overall goal.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome, Sean, and congratulations on the new position. So we have, excuse me, we have a couple of minutes left. Does anybody else want to share what they discussed? Danita, I'm looking at you.
And I was looking at Melvin, because I think he really he was in my group, he and Linda. So I think he really wanted to jump in, but if not, Melvin, I'll jump in. But I definitely want to give you the opportunity.
We want to hear from Melvin.
I'll defer to gender equity. No, I'm fortunate in that in my organization, we've had ERGs for about 3 years. We got 12, got 2 more. We have some people that are very interested in supporting it all throughout the organization, including our administrator. And there are other people who are less enthusiastic about it, but I think that's the norm across every organization. And we built a coalition of the willing, and we're using it to help us develop and drive strategy to determine where the landmines are throughout the organization, using the ERGs as early warning sensors to help us work towards becoming a model EEO/DEIA organization. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Open it up for Damita if she wants to add to that.
You know, I will just briefly. So I'm Damita Bird. I'm actually part of a consulting company, BCT Partners, out of Newark, New Jersey, and so we build strategy and development, and I lead our full diversity, equity, and inclusion department, along with our health equity department, on all things diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I've led ERG groups. I was on the corporate side. I led the group for about four and a half, almost 5 years, but also managed our networks as well across corporate, manufacturing divisions for probably 20 years. And so ERGs are kind of just a part of who I am, what I do, what I get to do. And so I've seen them, you know, in their peak, where they've done some really, really great things and really meshed and I would say plugged into the bottom line of companies, corporate, nonprofits, and government, where they were really helping to make a difference in strategy across those organizations. But I've also seen them too, I think what Shauna and others have said about where, you know, now it's about how do we use them to help build morale, you know, help with many of the things internally that our organizations are struggling with. But then how do you, one of the questions Linda had in our session was around how do you engage mid-level managers? And so, you know, I've written a couple white papers on it. You know, we won some awards on the work that we do with our ERGs, BRGs as well, to ensure that, again, you know, we are aligning with helping them learn, develop, and grow, as well as ensuring that, you know, there's connection to the bottom line of any organization that they're a part of, because there is so much value in the work that they do, and can be a part of, as a part of, you know, just developing, designing, creating, implementing ERGs, you know, throughout an organization. And we saw some major success with companies that we've partnered with to build strategy for them. And it almost feels like we're building new strategy, almost not every year, but at least every 2 to 3 years, because I think there's just continued opportunity to continue to grow them. So there's a lot I could go on for days about the great work ERGs bring to the table. So.
Oh, and that's fantastic. And I appreciate that. So we are at time. I want to say thank you all for attending. This was a great discussion. There's never enough time to actually talk through all of this, because I know there's a lot more that we could go through. You know, we hope that you received some value out of this discussion. I appreciate that you were here. And Pam, I will pass it over to you for closing.
To reiterate exactly what Jamie said, we are very thankful to each and every one of you for participating with us this afternoon. We look forward to future interactions with you, whether it be continuation of this week or at another time. If you need to reach out or would like to reach out to us, you're more than welcome to do so. You can reach us through Teresa or Jennifer. They can get to us directly. Jamie is going to be physically at the conference on Thursday and Friday. If you see him in the hallways, give him a shout out, let him know where you know him from. And we thank you for everything that you've offered to us and taken away from here today. Best of luck as you continue forward, and we hope that our paths cross again real soon. Have a great evening.
Thank you.